right, folks, welcome. This is Ask the Advisor. And of course, my name is DeForest B. Sawyer Jr., and I am the CEO of the DFREE Corporation and the DFREE Foundation. And we have with us tonight two very important people. We have a very important subject, but I want to give you time to come in. And if you're here already, just jot down your name or at least where you're from in the chat. Let us know where you're from. We've got two Midwesterners with us tonight, and I'd like to know if there's anybody else here from the Midwest, but wherever you're from, wherever you're listening from, wherever you're watching from, if you're on live. Now, I know some of you may be watching this as a pre-recorded program, so it really doesn't make sense to chat if this is not Wednesday night, March 26th, because if you're watching this on the weekend, then we won't be around to see the chat. But come on in. And while we're getting ready, I'm going to introduce our two guests just by name. And then one of them is going to read a very important message from our sponsor, which is Prudential. And then I'm going to come back and then they will introduce themselves much more thoroughly, let us know why it was so important for me to be in their presence tonight. So Joe Erickson is a financial advisor from Prudential. And so Joel, why don't you get us started with all of the technical language that you are required to share?
Sure. So basically, technical language, it's got some disclosures to make sure we're up to date. So, life insurance is issued by Prudential Life Insurance Company of North America, based out of Newark, New Jersey, and its affiliates. The materials being provided are informational, educational purposes. It's not meant to take investment objective in your financial situation. That's a one-on-one conversation, we say, with clients. The information is not intended for investment advice. It's not a recommendation about managing your investments and client retirement savings accounts. Clients seeking information regarding the particular investments should talk to a financial professional. Outstanding loans and withdrawals may reduce policy cash values and death benefits and may have consequences. So that's the disclosure we got to read, Doctor.
All right, Joe, thank you so much. And folks, you know that DFREE has had a partnership with Prudential since 2011. We have worked along with Prudential, and just as Joel read that disclaimer, the small print is that they're not here to sell you products. Prudential has made a commitment to the DFREE movement to help us help you, both through education and support. Everywhere we go, Prudential financial advisors come with us. They travel with us to churches. They travel with us to conventions. And without shoving any products down your throat, they sit down with the DFREE participants and members and followers and help you sort out some of your financial questions, help you understand financial terminology, help you think about your long-term goals, and then help you understand the value of speaking with a financial professional. I have said this more times than I can count. I get my hair cut from a licensed barber. I fly on airplanes flown by licensed pilots, and we want our financial advice to come from licensed financial advisors. And that's the value of our partnership with Prudential. And Prudential has made a special commitment to Black America. While many corporations are confused about how much help they should provide to special populations that have special needs in special ways, Prudential is in fact expanding and deepening its commitment to Black Americans who are the most financially fragile ethnic group in the country. Now, many people in our country are financially fragile, which simply means we're living paycheck to paycheck. We don't have savings for an emergency. We're not saving enough to retire. But African Americans are the most financially fragile of all groups in the country. And so Prudential has said that we're committed to everybody, but to the extent that special needs exist in African American communities, we're willing to make a special effort. And that effort is called Blueprints to Black Wealth. The Blueprint strategy is a part of what Prudential is doing, not just with Black Americans, but the whole idea of emerging markets and expanding on financial wellness in the country is Prudential's commitment. And they didn't just start this, they've been doing this for decades. So what I'm going to do, Eric and Regina, is ask you to introduce yourselves, say a word about what you do, why you do it, and then we'll get into the discussion tonight, which I believe is perhaps the most important conversation we've ever had on the DFREE platform.
So I'll start. So my name is Regina Walker. I'm a financial professional with Prudential. Just made my 18 years this month. But why I do what I do is because I know that there is a wealth gap within our community, and I want to be there to help those individuals that want to really bridge that gap to make that happen. And so that's why I do what I do, and I love working with people.
That's right. And Regina is from the Detroit metropolitan area, and we're just happy to have Detroit in the house. Eric, tell us more about
Sure.
yourself, what you do, and why you do
Again,
it.
Joel Erickson. I'm from the Minneapolis Twin Cities area, Minnesota. I've been doing this about 30 years in various forms. And I told my kids a long time ago when they were young, trying to figure out what dad did for a living. Without overcomplicating it, I told them I get to go to work every day to help people. And when I help people, I get to help our family. So we have a goal every day to help people live happy, abundant lives in their, whether it's financial or whatever they're going through in life.
Yeah, well, Joel and Regina, let me just thank you on behalf of the DFREE team. Let me thank both of you on behalf of our community. You don't get paid extra for coming tonight. You don't get paid overtime. This is something you do as a volunteer representing your company, but they couldn't make you do it, and I appreciate your willingness to serve. So tonight, folks, the topic has to do with how families talk about money. We talk to adults a lot about saving for retirement, getting out of debt, having an emergency fund, your 401k. And we've begun in DFREE to talk more to children about finances. We're having a big conference April 26th. We have a big youth section for that conference. We've got keynote speakers. We've got a young lady talking to kids about how she monetized her social media. We have another young lady talking about how she started her own business from scratch with no advice or help from anybody. So we have a lot of talk with young people, a lot of talk with adults, but we haven't had a lot of content or strategies around families talking with themselves, families talking to their family members about money. And that's the topic tonight. And I think if you listen to this presentation, you're going to take away at least one important tip that you could use in your family, your immediate family, and if you desire to do so, in your extended family. So let's start by talking about what is a money story, and why don't people talk much about money with their families?
It's a good question, right? And it's a question that probably Gene and I, if we do this long enough, would ask every day because we live in that, right? And for some reason, people just don't want to talk about it. They'll talk to you about all kinds of stuff, but when it comes to money, I think the biggest barrier is just not knowing or being embarrassed. They don't know. That's what my experience has been in life, and we're all humans, right? So we don't know. We kind of be quiet about, or don't. We're not afraid to ask questions. When the reality is, you should raise your hand and say, "I'm not sure," and ask for help. Um, I don't know, Gene, if you had thoughts on that, but
And so what I was going to say, I think a lot of us have been programmed to fake it till we make it. So it makes it very challenging for us to talk about money, although we know we need to. We have a lot of debt. We see our friends dress a certain way. We go out, we buy what they have, we accumulate a lot of debt. And once we do that, we're afraid to say, you know what, I need help. I really didn't need that. I did it because I saw someone else doing it. And so when we approach, and I've seen this, when I approach a client about talking about that, they're somewhat embarrassed, right? People are embarrassed, so they don't want to talk about it because of that. But I do believe that in order, again, to bridge the gap and to begin to have generational wealth, it is a conversation that has to be had.
Well, it really is. I learned so much by working with Prudential, because Prudential does so much research. And what I learned from you is that 83% of parents say they would have liked to learn more about finances when they're growing up. Half of the people say they didn't talk about money as kids. Most of the people I know, when I ask them if they talked about money as kids, the conversation was, we don't have any. So
Mm.
that's as far as the conversation went. And 43% of people would rather discuss politics. Can you imagine? Than to talk about finances. And 66, 2/3 of the people believe that conversations about money can do exactly what you said, Regina, and that is help close the wealth gap. So why does talking about money matter?
I believe it sets the foundation for some of the things that you would like to happen in your family, right? And so
Mhm.
I think about my story with my family. My father passed away when I was 13. Well, when I was 12, he left me some money and nobody talked to me about it. So I spent it. And I often say to individuals when I'm doing my presentations, had someone really sat down and talked to me about what money can do for me, opposed to what I'm doing with the money, I would have retired at age 50, right? Because I would have had an opportunity to invest, but nobody sat down. So I just think it's important that we have those conversations, we talk about it because it's important.
Absolutely. I know growing up, my father was an accountant, my mom was an entrepreneur, and they would sit at the kitchen table. And I was 4 years old. I remember some earliest memories talking about. I didn't know they were talking about it, but they were talking about how to spend money as a family and what they were going to do. And they had it open, so which made me very comfortable today to have conversations with people. But unfortunately, I don't talk about it, right? And I don't know. I didn't know the details. I didn't know what mom and dad had for budgets and money, but I heard it. So that's that comfort level of being able to talk about something that's considered very private for a lot of people.
Well, as a pastor, I've had to counsel many married couples. And the fact of the matter is that communications is the foundation for any strong relationship, starting with marriage. And it extends to the family. The more a family communicates about anything, the stronger that family is. A lot of times families kind of live in the same space, but they're like the poet said, ships passing in the night. And so communications is critical for strong families. And communications about money is certainly something that I know from my experience should be a priority. Now, I am intimidated by something that's about to happen. I'll tell both of you kind of an inside secret. When we decided to have our FinFest event in Newark, April 26th, we got a call from an organization that represents youth. And they said, we want to bring 125 kids. And we were just ecstatic. We were ecstatic because we've always wanted to have large numbers of young people. It's easier to get them through groups. And what burst my ecstatic feeling was when they said, and they're coming from grades 4 through 12. And because when I hear kids, I'm thinking, okay, high school, on their way to college, they're going to be tempted with credit cards. And I said, oh my God, kids 4, 5, and 6 years old, what on earth are we going to do? So we literally need your help in understanding, how do you talk to kids starting like at 5 years old about money?
Well, I think one way to do it is based off of things that they like. Like, so your kids like toys. So if they go to the store, they want a toy, you can use that desire to want that toy as to maybe why you have to postpone getting the toy, and why you may need to reallocate the funds to something else instead of buying the toy. So just using practical skills of talking to them will do that. And so I did that with my daughters. We want to have this, that, and the other. Well, right now that's not within our budget for this, and this is why, so that they understand that not every time you see something, one is meant for you to have it at that particular time. And then you can use games to help them to understand. I know when I was in elementary school, we had when we were in math, we used the little coins to learn about money. So even taking that home and then the parents expounding upon that, I think helps the kids. But one of the games we played was Monopoly. And I had a conversation with Joel. His experience was a little different from mine. We played Monopoly, but Monopoly was more so to just acquire property, but not understanding why we were acquiring it. Whereas for him, it was a lot different. So even using different games that's out there and available will help them as it relates to talking to them about finances.
That's so funny. I loved Monopoly when I was a kid but I had no idea that we were really talking about real estate. It was just, it was just a game. I made no correlation between the boardwalk on the game and the boardwalk in Atlantic City. It was just, it wasn't until I was grown that I connected the dots between the game monopoly and really owning real
Yeah.
estate and selling houses. Uh,
Yeah.
what do
One
you,
of the things,
Joe, what do you think about this planting seeds ages 5 to 12?
it's important. I shared my experience growing up and having those parents that worked in this world, entrepreneurs, learning. I didn't realize I was learning, but they were setting an example for me, right? That's all we can do as parents. And Gene, as you said, it's, hey, I played Monopoly, and I just wanted to play with all the time, and I would get mad because I felt they were cheating. Well, my dad, being the stoic accountant, said, "Well, read the rules." So I did, and guess what? Once I read the rules and understood the rules, I started winning, and the person couldn't beat me again. So that was my experience playing Monopoly as a kid, right? It wasn't just about acquiring property; it was also, following the rules that are out there and understanding them and using them to your advantage to win. Which is a lot of what we talk. But those games kind of teach that gamesmanship. There's another game I've talked to clients about called Cash Flow for Kids. It's written by Rich Dad Poor Dad. It
Right.
teaches people real simply, we have these preconceived notions about money that, hey, if I invest X amount of dollars, it creates this kind of cash flow. It pays for a cell phone bill, or it pays this and that. And those are really simple concepts that as we get older, we can understand in life. And I've seen people utilize it and take off as the kids understood it. And I just actually had a client come in there today who has a autistic child and who's an adult and was going to go buy it, and because to understand how to utilize money as that person, right? And it's important because
Yeah,
money is a tool.
it's particularly important now because unlike when the three of us were growing up, teenagers today have credit cards in high school.
Yeah,
Teenagers today are the target of much marketing. I mean, much more marketing than we were. And teenagers today have appetites because of this marketing for things that are very expensive. I mean, when I was coming up, maybe the sneakers I wore had to be brand name, but that was about it. But now everything and every teenager is brand conscious and everything has a brand attached to it. So let's shift into the older kids, 13 to 18. I know we talk in among us about this building momentum. What does it mean to have a teenager and to really start getting serious and zooming in on their financial literacy?
I think from my standpoint, it was, raising my own families. My kids are now 30 and 25, and starting their own families, right? It was not necessarily getting their attention. It was having the conversation, the venue for having the conversation. My kid did a lot of sports activities growing up, so those car rides were invaluable to have these conversations, and they were short snippets, right? Because their attention span, they didn't want to hear dad lecture about, Charlie Brown's teacher in the background, right? Just keeping it simple and then talking about things that make sense. There's some ideas here sharing podcasts, but my own children, when they're young, Santa Claus offered to open up a bank account for them. And if they match, and he would match what they put into it, just to understand banking and investing. My daughter, older one, didn't want to do it. My son, my stepkids, got in the car and told his dad, "I own Pepsi, I own all these things." His dad's like, "What are you talking about?" He was 8, right? So just those kind of simple things you can do to help them. And I realized eventually I'd put a limit because they started giving me more and more money, and they were driving Santa Claus dad broke.
Yeah, I think I almost ruined my relationship with my twin sons uh, because I started a little too early, a little too big. They love Toys R Us. We lived about 5 miles away from Toys R Us, and they just when we took them to Toys R Us, it was like they died and went to heaven. So when they got to be about 9, 10 years old, I decided to take them to a financial professional. And for their birthday, instead of buying them Toys R Us, I bought them stock in Toys R Us. And I don't think they spoke to me all the way home from the office. They had no appreciation for shares in Toys R Us versus toys from Toys R Us. So I think you have to know your kids and you have to be intentional, but you have to be careful to teach them what they're prepared to learn. And I think those suggestions you made, Joel, are good suggestions. So what about as they're leaving the teenage years, going into what we call the nest, the leaving the nest years? Now, of course, you know, historically, 19 to 25 was a legitimate expectation as it related to the kids leaving home. I think today it's more like 19 to 35. And just given the cost of living, the cost of housing, and just the culture, more and more we're finding young people staying in the nest until they are in their 30s at least. But whatever the age is, let's talk about how to prepare and how to kind of tutor our young people towards leaving the nest.
So one of the things I did for my daughters is talk to them about having a budget. Both of them went off to college, and although I did provide for them financially, they had jobs. And so with my youngest one, she was a little more challenging than the oldest one. So she would always call me, even if she had money, she would always call me to spend my money. And so I had to get a little slick with her and ask her to allow me to see your budget as to where you're spending your money before you ask me for mine. But I did that because I wanted her to understand that one, money isn't free. We all work for it. I
Yeah.
know you think I'm your personal ATM, but this is not how this works. And so have them having a budget to understand and see where their money is going, I think helps them to understand that, you know what, sometimes I'm not going to be able to do some of the things that my friends are doing because I have a phone bill that I may have to pay because my mom isn't paying my phone bill, or I have car insurance to pay because I have this car. But I think even with that, if we are starting at 19 to have that budgeting conversation, we're almost too late. It needs to happen
Yeah.
maybe in junior high school. So by the time they get to college, it's really embedded in them that, okay, I have this much to save, I have this much to spend, and so that and this is the amount that's going to pay my bills, so that they are not doing what some of us adults have done, and that's to overextend ourselves, right? And so because our behaviors, whether we realize it or not, our behaviors, our children pick up on them because they watch us. So if we are sitting down and we're having those budget conversations when we're working on our budget, by the time they reach 19 and they leave to go off to school, or if they stay at home to 35, then they'll be able to better manage their finances.
Yeah. Carolyn Burrell is in, I think, California, right? And Carolyn reminds us that tithing is an important conversation for Christian families to have with their children. I know when I was very, very young, if I got a birthday gift, someone gave me $10 for my birthday, I had to put $1 in church. And whether it's tithing to a church or just supporting a great cause, philanthropy, giving and supporting others is really one of the key foundational principles that DFREE teaches, that everybody who receives a blessing, everybody who has benefits and who is blessed to be in a position to do so should be supporting their church, their synagogue, their mosque, their college, their university, their community, their Pop Warner League. But generosity is, I think, inextricably linked to having financial resources. So
Yes.
thanks, Carolyn, for that reminder. I wanted to also say that I completely agree that if you wait until they're 19 to start thinking about budgeting, you really are behind the 8 ball. And I'm not suggesting that you give the whole family budget to an 8-year-old, but I think we said a few slides earlier that awareness of what things cost is very important. It's important for children to know how much it costs to put food on the table. It's important for children to understand the relationship between the cost of living and the income that comes into the home. So this is so important. I'm very excited about this presentation. I've never had this conversation before at this level with two professionals, and it's so important. And I hope those who are watching appreciate the value. And I'm sure, again, you'll get at least one tip from this presentation and this conversation that can help
One
you
of
and
the
your
things,
family.
Dr.
Yeah,
Soares, is once they graduate college too, right? This is the kind of their colleges we're talking about, right? Once they're done and they've finished those goals, right? They should sit down with a professional and look at their benefits for their first jobs and stuff. Are they taking full advantage of this stuff?
right.
It's a big mystifying thing. A lot of people, they just look at their salary. They don't look at the total compensation package they're getting to protect their lives and do different things and put the right financial plan in place.
No question about it. I was doing a recording, and one of my sons was actually working. He works on the media team for DFREE. And I made the statement that you don't have to die to benefit from your life insurance. And he almost dropped the camera because he had never been exposed to the fact that life insurance is an asset that brings value in so many ways if you have the right kind of policy, even while you're still alive. And so I think to your point, Joel, it's just important to talk about the the more technical things, especially as they approach adulthood, because many of our young people leave in college with debt and they need a strategy for paying it off as quickly as possible. Many of them should understand how cost effective it is to get into a good life insurance policy while they're still young. So these conversations are critical. That's why D3 has a partnership with some of the fraternities and sororities nationally. We're spending much more time now focused on college age students, the college sorority chapters, the college fraternity chapters. And again, if any of our viewers are part of the D9 movement, the Panhellenic Council, we have special materials for sororities and fraternities that have undergraduate chapters, and we'd be happy to talk to you about it. So now let's move to what I had mentioned earlier. As a pastor, what I recognized was that the number one challenge married couples had was coming to some agreement over finances, which caused me to make financial education, financial literacy a part of premarital counseling. Because if you wait till you're married to start talking about how you handle money and what credit scores are, then I think it's a little too late. What advice do you have for married couples, people who are in partnerships, people who have significant others as it relates to financial planning?
So I'm not married, but as a single person looking to be married, one of the things that I think is important is that you do talk about money. The stats say that most people they get divorced because of finances. So I think it is important because you want somebody that is, I would say, on your level. Um, you don't want to marry somebody who's you're coming into $100,000 worth of debt and they don't have a plan to be able to pay the debt off. You don't want to marry somebody who has a credit score of 300 and you have a credit score of 750. That it just doesn't match. And one of my and I'm just gonna say this, one of my church members, she was trying to hook me up with somebody. And so I said to her, I said, well, at minimum, he needs to have a credit score of 750. And she was like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be able to find you anybody. I said, well, that's the minimum because my credit score is 820. So I can't have anybody who's not taking care of their business and I'm taking care of mine. But you want to have those conversations. And even if you don't know everything, you should be open to learn. And so I think that's the other piece to it. A lot of times people don't want to talk about it because they don't know. But be
Mhm.
open to learn. And that's where the financial professionals come into play. You want to be transparent about it, and then you can get the help that you need. Joe might have a different answer because he's married, but
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, marriage isn't always perfect, first of all, for everything. So we all have our trials through life. But I'll tell you what, my father told my wife this, and I didn't know the concept years later, that he said there's nothing more powerful than a couple that's on the same page financially. You will get to your goals faster. It's a team approach and everything else. And we've always tried to live our life that way. And I found a lot of times with our own personal relationship, that's when the time's been toughest. We've not been on the same page financially, right? We're rowing the boat different directions and not in spinning in circles versus, trying to get to our end goal of what we want to do with it. So you're absolutely right, Gene. It's having that conversation. Matter of fact, my own daughter, she just got married about a year ago. December, and we had our first grandchild. And one of the things we encouraged them to do was to find a financial planner to talk to. And someone's like, "Why not you?" I said, "Well, I have what's called advisor blindness. It's my kid. I can give advice, but again, Charlie Brown's teacher kind of kicks in. Are they really listening to us? They found someone they can trust to be on the same page financially because they believe that, hey, they want it. This is long term, and they're a faith based marriage, and this is important to them to have that conversation." Whether it's 5 minutes or a half hour, it doesn't need to be complicated, right? just be on the same page.
Yeah, and folks, what we're describing is not so much an event, but it's a lifestyle. Meeting with a financial professional is the beginning of a lifestyle of consultations and advice from financial professionals. You'd be surprised to know, well, you wouldn't because of what you do, but people would be surprised to know, for instance, how life changes were not aligned with naming beneficiaries in insurance policies. And I've seen it over and over and over again where a marriage breaks up, and then the people who were married remarry other people. They never changed their policies. They didn't check their policies, and so you had the unlikely person showing up to get the death benefits when the person who died they hadn't been with for years. So this idea of financial planning, this idea of having financial advisement, this idea of looking at the right products along life spectrum is a lifestyle. Having a will, having a living will, all of these things that we're talking about for family conversations is something that's ongoing for as long as we're here.
And it's really not that hard to do. It just takes some time and focus to do it. And it's not a hard process, not overwhelming. We're here to help people do that.
Yeah.
By the way, one of the things people ask us how often, at minimum every year, review what's going on in your life.
At minimum every year. You said the word that we repeat over and over again, that is focus. Pay attention. Pay attention to your income, pay attention to your expenses, pay attention to the products that you own, pay attention to the contracts you sign, just pay attention. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Forrest, can I go back?
Yes.
I just wanted to say this. A house divided won't stand, right? So if you're divided on your finances, it's going to cause some issues and you won't be able to accomplish the goals that you both have because you're on two different pages. The boat is pulled in two different ways. So.
Well, and that's why you are so correct in citing the fact that when marriages are dissolved, more often than not, the problem was around finances. And it's not just not having finances, it's just not agreeing on the finances. If she wants a new dining room set and I want new golf clubs and we can only afford one or the other, that can be the source of a downward spiral of our relationship.
Right.
So
people don't realize how important, not that Gina and I are that important to people, but our professionals important. During the pandemic, we were considered first line responders during the pandemic. We didn't slow down because of what we're talking about here. When people's financial lives go astray, bad things happen and bad choices happen in life.
Yeah,
it's very
and there's a high level of stress that a company is not paying attention because what happens is you're caught off guard. You're not ready for life as it occurs, and it's a stressful way to live. One of the interesting things in the corporate world, I'm on a few corporate boards, and I didn't realize this until I really got into high level corporate leadership position, and that is insurance for corporate America is related to risk. And so we should think in terms of the risk of not being covered, the risk of not having a plan, the risk of not having professionals advise us. And what risk simply means is whether or not something is likely to happen. And if it does happen, are we ready in the event that it happens?
Yeah, I used to tell people all the time, imagine a mysterious virus came over the world, you couldn't leave your house, how would you function? Well, darn it, that happened.
That happened. Yeah. No need to imagine anymore. Just think back. Right? Yeah.
Right.
So I just left my mother's house. My mother's 93. She'll be 94 in May. My dad died when he was 47. So I've had responsibility for my mother as her oldest son since 1975. And it's been a joy in one sense to have my mom with me this long. It's a challenge. She likes to send text messages at midnight. She has Zoom meetings and sometimes her Zoom doesn't work. But beyond that, mom has to navigate and has had to navigate all of the issues that accompany company aging. And I want to be faithful to caring for her. I also want to be faithful to her vision and legacy. So now we've talked about teens, we've talked about young adults, we've talked about married couples. Let's talk a bit about our parents and our grandparents, especially those of us that are caring for our elderly parents.
So I'll jump in. I cared for my mom who had dementia for quite some time. She was diagnosed at 54, 55, and she passed
Wow.
away at 61. So very young to have acquired that disease. And one of the things that I tried to get her to talk about was one, getting long-term care, right? Because we don't talk about those type of things. Sometimes we just, nothing is going to happen to me, or we hope we go quick. And that's not always the case. But in that, I wish we would have also talked about having her her trust in her will and whatnot set up. I was too close for her to listen to me, as he was stating with his daughter. He recommended that she go to someone else, and I should have done that with my mom, so that she would have had those things in place, her wishes, so that once she passed away, things would have been the way she wanted them to be. And still, while she was living, there were financial things that needed to be taken care of for her, that they would have been able to be taken care of. So I do stress that with my clients when talking with them, is that you want to have those conversations. They are hard. But you have to do what you need to do to make it a little easier and comfortable for them. So when the time comes, things will happen the way they want them to happen, whether or not that's them wanting to be cremated, their body donated to science, whatever the case may be. You want them to have the choice. And I tell my clients that you want to have the choice in your decision making as to what happens once you pass away. But you also want to make sure that in the event that you become incapacitated while you're living, you have the right person in place to take care of your finances. You don't want your family fighting over money and assets, because we know that happens all the time. I've seen it, time and time again. So it's very important that we have those conversations and talk to them, help them gather their all of their forms that need a designated beneficiary, make sure those up to date. I called a gentleman probably 2 weeks ago. He's about 80 years old. He had his parents still on his life insurance policy. The likelihood of them living is, they could still be, but in the event that something happens to them, were they going to be able to take care of the
Right.
burial for him? Right. So you want to get all of that together and talk to them about that. And all of those things are important. Knowing who their estate attorney is, knowing who their financial professional is, knowing who their tax person is, all of those things are going to be important to help them, so that when something does happen, it's not when, it's not what, is when, that everything is in place so that you can move forward for them, and you're not having to probate everything, because that's another conversation, but that's a whole different situation a person has to deal with.
That's when the attorney's bills go by the hour if we don't plan ahead for those things. I agree with Regina. We don't know when our Heavenly Father's going to call us home, right? So a little preparation and pre-work and pre-thought goes a long way. Because once we're gone, we can't make these choices anymore and do what we need to do. One of the stories I tell clients all the time is I've got an important person in my life who may have been my grandmother, and made a book of her important things in life, because I am second generation born in this country, and took pictures of what was important to her and created a book about her life and my grandfather's life as immigrants coming here. And it wasn't necessarily the stuff or the money or whatever. It was the legacy. It was important to them that we all received as a gift, which is extremely important too. And you can do it so easily online in today's technology to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's really cool that we have that today as a takeaway, my family's legacy.
Yeah, it really is. My dad, I told you, died at 47. A week before he died, he took me to the bank, opened his safe deposit box, and showed me all of his life. And he had a list of things that we should do in the event of his death. 1 week later, I was back at the bank executing all the tasks he had laid out. Thank God he had insurance, everything was organized, and so it reduced the trauma of having lost him at 47 years old. Now, on the other side, my mom is 93, be 94 in May, and what I've discovered is that it's a different kind of responsibility. When someone dies at a young age, this, Regina, you have one set of challenges. When someone lives on and on and on, you have a different set of challenges, and it's a matter of staying focused and being ready and asking professionals to guide you through that season and that challenge. I have members of my family who have children and who have significant others that are what we call today special needs, simply meaning they either cannot or never will be able to live independently. And I know that it is more likely that someone will become disabled before they're 65 than someone will die before they're 65. And so let's wrap up tonight by talking about special needs planning. How do we get ready for that which we would never know is going to happen until it happens?
Go ahead,
I
Joe.
guess I can go. So for my share, it's an important conversation. People through life, and it's a matter of level of what their ability to work in the world and live in the world around us, right? I always say we all see the world differently through different spectrums, right? And how they can impact and how they look at that world, whether it's a physical or mental challenge in life. But the most caring thing to do is if mom and dad are the guardians and the ones doing a lot of the keeping, talking to an attorney, talking to professionals, and setting up those special needs trusts, they're called, and then not just setting up the trust, but funding it with a product called life insurance to help make sure there's money to help with that care going forward, right? And then not just worrying about leaving a pile of money, but actually putting a helpful plan in place to help make sure they can get through life the best they can and live the most, like I said earlier, happy and abundant life. It's what we all wish to have for each other, right?
Yeah,
Things. Gina, I don't know what your thoughts are.
No,
right.
I would also piggyback on what you said and say that it is important that they sit down and they talk with an estate attorney who can help them set up that plan. And you want to think about that. A lot of times we think we're going to live forever, right? But just in case something happens, you want to have a successor who takes care of your child in the event that something happens to you and their special needs. You want to make sure that the trust is set up correctly, because if not, and you put them on as beneficiary on all of the assets that you have, then you prevent them from getting other services that they could possibly get as it relates to like Medicaid and things of that nature. So it's very important that you sit down and speak with someone to make sure that those things are set up properly in the event of your passing.
By the way, we use words like trusts and wills, and people automatically think it's going to be expensive. It's really not. In today's technology, there's tools out there that are really, really easy to use and aren't going to cost you a lot. I just had a client use something that we have through our group, and I know, Regina, you have it too, in the background with an online tool. It cost them $200 to get a will and then get it notarized, which wasn't that expensive at all if you think of the grand scheme of things, right? And to do these
Right.
things.
Yeah, we have a partnership with a company that allows you to do your living will and your end of life will. And like you said, it's cost effective, it's user friendly. I can't think of the name right this second, but go to DFREE.com, get help. And there are a number of resources there that you can connect to, most of which are
You probably
free.
see them advertised on TV.
Yeah, yeah. So listen, Stella, one of my former church members, Stella asked a very important question. Can you share an organized way to list and share the list of important people, documents, tasks to help with that end of life process?
Well, we do have some, there's a document that we have that we give out to clients to help them organize things. If she wants to reach out, that's something that I could provide her with. I do know sometimes that hospitals will have that type of information that you can get from them, and they'll help you.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a checklist of, which is not always comprehensive, but they're pretty good ways to start, kind of gathering that date and information.
Yeah, there's a
For sure.
plethora, to your previous point, Joel, of websites and online resources where you can go. If you go to dfree.com, if you don't find anything there, you can drop a note for us and we'll connect you with something.
Yeah, I know Prudential Life Insurance has tools that we can share too.
Right.
We're happy to do
Right.
it.
Good. I'm shocked that I saw Stella's comment because I'm not good at looking at the camera and looking at comments at the same time. But listen, what have we not said tonight, Joel and Regina, that you know needs to be said. The conversation is about talking within the family unit about finances. We have with us Joel and Regina, two financial professionals licensed in multiple states, by the way, and they do this for a living. But they're here tonight because of the commitment to the community, their partnership with DFREE, and the backing they get from Prudential. So what questions, what issues, what what do you encounter with your clients from time to time that you'd like to share, and we've not discussed it adequately tonight?
I would say one of the things that I've noticed is that with my clients is sometimes people don't want to be totally honest about where they are and what they need help with, but we can only help you with the information that you give us, right? So one of the things I would say to people, don't be afraid to sit down and talk with a professional and be open and honest. We're here to be non-judgmental. Our goal at the end of the day is to sit down with you, find out where you are, and then build a roadmap to help you to get to where you're trying to be. And so,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember as a kid growing up, I still can see the sign, the poster in the elementary school wall. There's no silly questions, just unanswered questions. Don't be silly, right? Which keep it, goes back to the keep it silly, keep it simple, silly, right? The KISS method. I was told something different growing up. Use a different word, but I use silly
Yeah,
today.
right.
With things. That's the biggest thing is, if there's the worst thing is to have an unanswered question, right? If it's keep you up at night, ask, go online and start in research and look, and then, it's a good place to start, and then see how it applies to your situation. Talk to a professional. We say it all the time, conversations are free. I know both Gene and I are licensing, we're fiduciaries. That's a big buzzword, right? We have to tell you when things start costing money. Legally, we have to tell you it's going to cost money at this point, right? But conversations it's important for us to make sure you understand what's going on and what you own and why you own it and what's going to do for you out
Yeah.
there, right?
So
So
I'm glad you said that, Joe, because when people ask me, ask me, how do I pick a financial professional? And my answer is always, listen, any financial professional who wants to charge you just to talk to them, run. Just don't even
right.
sit down. Just keep running, keep talking. And anyone who tries to sell you a product, the first time you talk to them, get up and walk away.
Mhm.
Because true financial professionals are exactly, folks, what Joel and Regina said about themselves, why they do this. And my experience is when you meet people like them who are really trying to help, they'll make enough money to feed their families without having to kind of coerce you into buying a product.
Yeah,
I really
goes back to what I
appreciate that.
said. Goes back to what I said. I told my kids a long time ago, I get to go to work every day to help people. When I do, I get to help my family.
That's right. That's
Right there,
exactly
right?
right. So, folks, listen, if you are interested in talking to a financial professional, which I hope you are, I mean, you can see now these are real people. These are not sales people. These are people helping people. And there's a QR code. Is it on the screen yet? It's on my screen. There should be a QR code on your screen. You can, take out your phone. Uh, you can take a picture of the QR code, and what'll happen is you'll get connected to either Joe or Regina, or if there's someone closer to you or someone who is more appropriate for you to talk to on their team, you'll be connected to them and you'll be connected quickly. What I do want to say is that DFREE is in partnership with Prudential. We travel all the time, everywhere, and we're committed to helping our community with all kinds of needs. Sometimes you're in such a financial crisis that you're not ready to talk to a professional. You need help, for instance, if you're drowning in debt, if you've got a payday loan and they're chasing you down, if they've garnished your wages. We have people that will help you with that also. These two are professionals. We have professional debt counselors if you are behind on your mortgage, if the student loan that you're trying to pay off is still piling up and you're behind your payments. We can help you with all of that. Blueprints is not just about insurance. Blueprints is about helping our community take advantage of all available resources to get from where we are as a family to where we have the potential to be. So don't be shy. Regina said it earlier. Don't be embarrassed. All of us, I could tell you story after story after story I lived for 13 years running from bill collectors, using credit cards as though they were income. It was just embarrassing. I can say it now because I'm past it, but what I'm telling you is that I had to tell the truth to myself about myself before I could reach out for help and get to where I am today. So scan this. You may not want to use it tonight. Maybe you want to use it tomorrow, but scan this QR code so that it's available to you when you can and when you are willing to use it. All right. Any closing comments, Joel? Any closing comments, Regina? I really appreciate you spending your time with me
I
tonight.
appreciate you, sir, and every time I've talked to you now a couple different times, I learned something new. So I appreciate your wealth of knowledge and your efforts out there. Thanks for the time
Thank
tonight.
you. Great, Regina.
No, just thank you. I always enjoy working with you, Dr. Sobers. So, yes. And I just hope everybody just takes the information and begins to have the conversations with their family, and don't be afraid. We have to start somewhere. So today is the day.
Yeah, don't be afraid. I want to thank our team that's working the platform and the technology and everything that goes into this. All I do is turn on the computer and talk. And everything else is done by people who know much more about these devices than I do. So thank you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you, Angela Dadson, and whoever else from my team is a part of this program tonight. And if you're watching this as a recording, you can still use the CR code, the QR code is good forever. And so you may not be watching this live, but if you're watching the recording, use the QR code. You can go to dfree.com, get in touch, and be prepared for us to respond. I'd like to simply say April 26th, if you are in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Connecticut, if you can get to Newark, you will see Prudential, you will see me, you will hear Karen Hunter from SiriusXM Urban View, you will hear the budget niece that we just added her to the program today. We have programming for adults and for kids. And our partner, in addition to Prudential, is RWJ Barnabas Health. You'll have free screenings, free blood pressure tests, free COVID vaccinations if you've never been vaccinated, free flu shots. And we're doing this because it doesn't matter how much wealth you accumulate if you don't take care of your health. So FinFest is on April 26th. It's wealth protected by health. We've got doctors and nurses and financial advisors all in one place at one time, speakers for adults and kids. Go to dfree.com to get more information about FinFest, and it's all free. The speakers are free, the food is free, the giveaways are free. It's all absolutely free. So thank you so much. Thank you, Emmanuel. I see your comments. Thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you next quarter when we have another Ask the Advisor with our friends at Prudential.